Well, welcome. Tonight, I'm happy to report there's better news coming from Beacon Hill than Capitol Hill. There's actually news that we can listen coming from Beacon Hill. And one of the people that's representing us and helping us, as he has for, I could say too many decades, but then Emily will beat me up. Why don't we start with an introduction?
Yeah, no, Brian Murray, your state representative, now into my second term, and very glad to be here as always.
Now, how different is second term versus first term?
I would say like night and day, as you know, I see the opening part because the beginning of the session is very, very hectic. So we got sworn in on January 2nd. The session started on that first Wednesday. And that's a very busy day in terms of all of the new members. And we have a new class of about 25 new members to the House, which is a large number for a 160-person body. And we have until January 18th to file all of our bills. So you need to know what bills you want to file, what form they need to be put in, and get them filed before January 18th if you want to make sure that those bills are going to go to a committee and have a hearing and then move on. You can file bills after that, but there's no guarantee that it would go to a committee or get a hearing. So it's very, very hectic to first determine what bills you want to file. And when you're a first-time legislator, all of the different advocacy groups and lobbyists are really in front of you. They want, you know, to be the first ones on your list so that you're going to be looking at their issues, whether it's, you know, social services, the environment, municipalities, I mean, just any police, fire, nursing, medical, I mean, anything that you can think of, there is a lobbyist group, and those individuals in front of you giving you information on what they think needs to be filed, and either asking you to file it or asking you to support it. So we're coming off of those bills having been filed. Now we have a time period to February 1st, I believe, where we need to look at all of the bills that were filed to see which ones we want to be co-sponsors of. And that results in hundreds of emails during the day. Each email could contain anywhere from 1 to maybe 30 different bills of a legislator, and you need to go through those. This number 1, I like that, I'll sign on to it. Number 2, I don't think so. Do you know what I mean? And evaluate that. So as your first-time legislator coming out, and I spoke to a couple of first-timers, I mean, your head is spinning. It literally is. Add that on top of the fact that you're in the bullpen. They're in a hearing room.
I was going to say, did you get out of the bullpen now?
I got out of the bullpen, but I was in the bullpen through April of my first year. So January, February, March, well into budget session, which starts in April, I still didn't have an office. So when you're in the bullpen, it's basically just a conference room. This new class is very large, so they have a hearing room. But there's the legislator and your aide, and right on down the table, and that's all you have.
But now, you start. Now the first thing is I'm amazed you've got 14 days. If you're a brand new rep, you start January 2nd, you got 14 days to get everything
16,
filed.
yeah, till January 18th.
Okay, so you got 16 days.
Yep.
Do you even know, I mean, you learn where the coffee is, but how do you even know who to go grovel to get your bills through?
The thing is, and the way I handled it, I concentrated on, you know, just some local bills. I wasn't looking to, really be filing major, comprehensive, statewide legislation. So I think you really need to focus on bills that are key to your area. My first session, actually, one of my bills was was one of the 3 bills that was incorporated into what the governor just signed, that Airbnb regulation and tax. So that was one of the major bills that I had filed and actually became part of that final legislation. Other than that, I really just focused on local bills. So, you get a sense, I think, as to what you want to try to do. Being a lawyer, it's a little bit easier for me, I think, in terms of drafting up what a proposed bill ought to look like, whether you're amending a statute or creating something out of whole cloth. But House Counsel is very, very helpful. In fact, even this session here, I have 2 bills that, I've put the framework out and I've sent them down to House Counsel to draft the details. One of them was brought to my attention by our local assistant assessor. And she believes, as the assessor's office I think fully does, that the elderly real estate tax exemption that we have in Milford, really statewide, is too limiting in terms of income and asset eligibility. So the bill that I have, for example, is increasing the income eligibility from $20,000 a year for a individual elderly person to $30,000 a year. I don't know when the last time the base numbers were changed. There's a provision to allow Social Security increases, so the actual eligibility number is like $24,000, but the base number has been 20 for a long time. So she brought it to my attention, actually at the senior center. And it was a big issue because a lot of folks are having difficulty with real estate tax as they get older, and find the income guidelines, too restrictive. So that's one of the bills that I have down before House Counsel to work out the details on that.
But if I've got 16 days, now you're elected in November, so I guess you have 4 or 5 weeks to try and bone up on what to do?
Yeah, and of course there's a lot of other things to do as a first-time legislator. When I first got elected last term, you have to hire an aide. You have to figure out who you're going to hire as a legislative aide. You have to figure out all of the different things that you need for the office, the personnel issues that you have to deal with. So there's a lot of acclimation to getting situated before you can even really think about what kind of legislation you might want to deal with.
But now you got an office in April.
Yes, my first term.
Your first term.
First term.
Why does it take 4 months?
Well, I think what happens is as offices clear out, okay, then there is a hierarchy process in terms of filling them. So maybe you've been, in the State House for 10 years. Okay, Al, we've got all of these offices now open.
You get to pick one.
Would you like, one of these offices? Also, there's a changeover in committees. So, okay, Al, you've been here 10 years. You were on Transportation Committee, but now we really need you on Revenue Committee. Revenue Committee's offices are over there. So once the leadership shakes down and the incumbent, the older representatives get placed in their different spots, then the newcomers go into what's left over.
So there's like zones of committees.
Yes.
I just thought it was all, seniority or chairmanships and.
Well, that's part of it. So, for example, when John Fernandez was chair of the Judiciary Committee, which is a major committee and a major position that he held, that's a suite of offices. So John had his office. There were a number of spots for aides. And then a lot of the representatives who are also on Judiciary would be in that suite of offices.
Oh, okay.
And those committees change. So there's no committees appointed right now. That's going to happen probably in the next couple of weeks. And then that will start shaking down, where the
Okay, so that makes sense why then is everybody jockeys around.
Yeah, so there's openings. So like I said, in fact, this year there was a big turnover, so there's even going to be more openings. So that would dictate how that space is open. So you might have had your office for a couple of years, but now you're going to move to the Judiciary Suite, so now your office is open.
And I may have a good office, so then too, you get to cascade.
Yeah. So maybe I was there, so now I'm in like, a couple of terms, so then they'll come down, hey, Brian, this office is open, would you like to go to that office? So that's what it is. And then finally the freshmen get placed to, what's left over. That's right.
So what committees are you looking for this year?
I met with the Speaker last week, actually, And I was very, very pleased to be on the Municipalities and County Government Committee. It was, I think, a lot of fun, and it was really something that I could relate to and I think be productive. And the other committee, which was very, very important, and I would like to work on it more because there's some major legislation that's going to be before it, is the Economic Development and Emerging Technologies Committee. So, for example, you may have seen in the news that the governor is proposing a bill to legalize sport betting in Massachusetts, and also the fantasy sports regulation. Those bills will come before Economic Development and Technologies. So that's a key committee. I was also on revenue last time and global warming. I'd like to continue to remain on global warming. Climate change has been a huge issue. There's been a tremendous amount of activity in Boston for a number of bills to address climate change, to help renewable energy. All of these types of environmental type bills are very, very prevalent in this session, and I think the Global Warming Committee would be helpful for that. And you know, lastly, I told the speaker, and I'll be honest, that's exactly what I told him. I said, look, I was on revenue last time, and I mean, you know, if you need me to go back there, I'll go back there. But if there's something else that you feel there's a need at that I can help out, just plug me where you want. To me, the primary ones are municipalities and economic development.
But now the global warming, how much of an impact can we have on a state level?
Well, we can have a tremendous impact, and we can have a greater impact by working with regions. So we have an energy compact with the New England states in terms of electricity, the REGI Pact. And if you'll notice, the governor just signed on to start a similar regional initiative with the Eastern Seaboard states for transportation. So clearly, you know, it should be done nationally. As you mentioned, I don't think that's going to happen where they can, you know. So I think you're up to the states to work on these things, you know, to reduce the carbon footprint, you know, to reduce the carbon emissions. I think to really promote the wind technology, to really promote the solar energy, and kind of intertwined with that and interrelated is the waste management and recyclable issue, which is another huge issue for the environment. All of that's really kind of interrelated in terms of the climate.
Well, the recycle especially, because it always seemed that, you know, you should do it because it's the right thing to do. But if that didn't really float your boat, the economic impact of, you know, reducing our tonnage.
Yes.
But now all of a sudden you're hearing China's cut back and it has to be 95% or greater pure, which one pizza box in the stream kills that. But, you know, I'm reading that it's costing as much to incinerate recycle because they can't sell it or give it away anymore.
Yeah.
So
it's a major issue. So I mean, in fact, I'm getting into a number of those bills, just trying to research them. But there are a number of bills that talk about limiting the one-time plastics. There are bills looking to assess fees on the producers of products that have materials that are not recyclable, to create a fund so that can be dispersed to municipalities so that they can handle their waste management problem. So there's a number of different ways to attack it. It's a very serious issue. It's a very serious issue.
Well, and we're starting to see a couple stores locally, no more plastic bags.
Sure.
So I'm assuming it's because the paper is recyclable or biodegradable.
Yep. Or better yet, have your own bag, you know. I mean, and, you know, I'm sure you guys do it. I mean, Emily, you know, she's got, you know, her cloth bags right in the back of the car.
We have hundreds of them because somehow they forget to take them and they buy more.
I know, yeah. Oh, I should have brought my bags.
Right.
She keeps them right in the car, and you know, tries to use them whenever
we've
you can.
lived BJ's. They don't have bags. Somehow we load up.
Yeah, well, since the kids moved out, we haven't gone to BJ's, but
but you know, we load everything up, and then we get home and cart it in the house. So when you have to, you do what you have to.
Right. So those are the kinds of hotbed issues that I think are that I'm seeing in this session. I met with probably, oh gosh, let me just think for 1 second. Today I had 4 different meetings with advocates, yesterday either 3 or 4, and the majority of those meetings were environmentally related, about environmental bills.
Now, we should do these things. It's the right thing to do for grandkids, but does that put Massachusetts at a disadvantage because it drives up the cost of electricity and all?
I don't think so. I think that it's really an economic engine. You know, the solar industry in Massachusetts is huge, and I think that we need to do more to encourage that. I see it as an economic benefit, creating a new industry, creating a new business, and all of the spin-off businesses that go with it. You know, the wind technology, where you know, that's going to be coming on board. We'll be the first state to have that wind technology in the ocean, again creating a new industry. I really see it as an economic driver that helps the environment.
Now, I didn't understand how the environmentalists were against the windmills and the sound.
That was a while ago.
Right, but
yeah.
I mean, I couldn't
Yeah,
understand saying, wait a minute, if I care about the environment, yeah, maybe it doesn't look as nice when I'm sailing out there, but...
Environmentalists, and it's interesting you should say that. I mean, it's a generic term. You know, it's like saying cars, you know, I like cars. Well, you know, what do you like, an SUV? So environmentalists can be a lot of different things, and I think those folks were concerned about the ocean and sea life and that type of thing. But I think those concerns are gone, and I think that pretty much everyone is on board with the wind technology, that's a good idea, and going forward on that.
Okay, as we start looking, big question. How is the paralysis in Washington affecting us?
It affects us in the sense that benefits, federal benefits that are supposed to come to the state, Massachusetts, don't. And, you know, we're at the position where, you know, we need to kind of fill in the gap. I was one of about 70 legislators that just signed a letter to the governor asking him for an appropriation. I think it was $30 million for emergency home heating oil because the federal government stopped funding that for people. We have the same issues with SNAP, the food stamps benefit. We have the same issue with the Mass Health, you know, the Medicaid money that would come in.
No, but wait a minute. They're not, I thought they were taking care of those critical items.
Well, this is totally separate from I'm not talking about the shutdown. I'm talking about kind of a progressive policy of the administration to issue regulations whenever possible to reduce these benefits. Totally separate from the government shutdown, which is a whole other situation, and we filed some bills to help the federal workers in Massachusetts affected by the shutdown, which is another area how the Washington situation has affected the Commonwealth. So we filed some bills for those benefits. But environmental regulations, the EPA has cut back on a number of different controls on pollutants and that type of thing. So the DEP, the state, has to step up and kind of try to enforce those. So beyond what you see in the news and the tweets and the president, his administration, I think, has been very, very dangerous in terms of particularly the environment, but also social services as well. So we at the state level are working to try to plug those gaps.
Let's take that one at a time. The environment. We can control Massachusetts companies, but the coal-fired plants out in the square states that are floating hydrogen sulfide into the air, what can we do except accept the sulfuric acid that comes down on our forests here?
Well, I mean, first of all, you know, I think every action starts at home. I mean, a lot of people ask me that, oh, how can I make a difference? What can I do? I say, you can make a difference by doing something here in the community. This is where it starts. To grow beyond that, we really have to seek to regionalize with other states. And that's what we've done in Massachusetts in terms of the New England states and now the Eastern Seaboard states to try to prevent just what you're saying, some of those things right there.
Now, when we look at the trend for supporting social services, I mean, the indication, at least what you hear in the media, I mean, I always love in the morning, I turn on Fox News,
Okay.
then I turn on CNN,
Yeah.
and somewhere I believe in the middle
Okay.
is probably reality.
Right. Right.
Because, you know, if I listen to one,
Yeah.
you know, the Democrats are all devils, and I listen to the other, and the Republicans are all devils, and I can't figure out who's who.
Right. Yeah.
But
yeah. The national programs can be difficult.
I don't hear good things coming. It seems like they're cutting back on everything they can and leaving it up to the states to pick up the slack.
Yeah, that's boiled down. That's pretty much it. You know, they're chipping away at a lot of things, and you know, I think we're fortunate in Massachusetts in the sense that we've got a democratically controlled legislature and a Republican governor that work very well together, and for the most part are on the same page in terms of not trying to hurt people and really trying to benefit folks wherever we can. Not every state has that.
And it's amazing because I've always said I'm kind of proud of the fact that I have a hard time trying to tell the difference between a conservative Democrat, a conservative Massachusetts Democrat, and a liberal Massachusetts Republican. And John Fernandez used to tell me that you got 30% on each side,
Right.
and you fight your election for the 40% in the middle.
Sure.
But when I go into other parts of the country, like I get out to the square states and
Yep.
or go all the way to California. Boy, there doesn't seem to be a gradient there. There seems to be a step gradient like a cliff. Is it just my perception, or are we different from a lot of the country?
You know, I think we are. Again, you know, I've had a chance to work with the administration on a lot of different issues. You know, I don't find ideology to be a stumbling block in any way. It's a very practical oriented administration, and you know, for whatever criticism exists for the legislature, I think that both the Senate and the House is also by and large very practically oriented, and the idea is to get things done, and get things done not for the sake of doing something and rushing into it and doing the press release and saying we did that, trying to be thorough and thoughtful about it and try to bring in as many stakeholders as you can on a particular issue so that when something does get passed, it's comprehensive, it makes sense, and it ought to work.
Now, it seems like the governor's gotten very busy lately.
Governor's been very busy, yes.
That's not just my...
Very active, yes. A number of bills he's proposed just in the first couple of weeks, and I brought tonight, you know, his budget. We got that today. This came out. This is House 1. So I delivered to my office just today, right before I came here. So this is the starting point for the budget discussions. From my perspective, I mean, I'm sure Ways and Means and the leadership are going to be working with these numbers immediately, but from my perspective, and I think most representatives, I think we're a little bit more focused on the bills right now because that's a February 1st deadline, and we really won't be, you know, getting into the budget really until March or April.
But we're sitting here in January, and you have House 1.
Yes.
And that's always what we look at locally, just...
Exactly. This is your preliminary information. I remember during the campaign, you know, my opponent criticized me because there was a vote to, the vote that I had against providing preliminary numbers in February on a bill, and I said, yeah, I voted against it because, you know, for years we've always had preliminary numbers in January through the governor's budget, and it was not necessary. It was a political vote that was put forth. But you're right. This is the, you know, initial guidelines that municipalities will look at and now see what their cherry sheet numbers were and start, you know, building their budget accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, this was always what we used, if you remember. Is it 2% or is it 2.7%?
Right.
You know, but never really saw wild changes in it.
Right. Right. So this is the starting point for the budget, and there's a big increase in here from what I understand. Again, obviously I haven't had a chance to go through it, but from what I've heard, there's a big increase for education money. I think over $260 million from last year. A lot of the foundation budget review recommendations that, again, that's an issue that a lot of people are really pushing to try to increase educational funding through the formula, taking into account districts that have high numbers of low-income students, SPED students, English language learner students, and really kind of update how that fund is dispersed. The governor has wrapped a lot of that into this budget.
But now, Milford gets, what, about 47% of its educational expenses reimbursed?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the percentage is, if that's what the number is
It was
now.
somewhere around
Yeah.
47. And I always wonder, of that 200 million, how much, are we going to see any of it, or is it going to be?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the allocations are to the individual municipalities. You know, I'm sure the school districts will, be online if they haven't done it already, tomorrow, and, they can plug in and see what their, district numbers are going to be.
But now, as we go and look at the budget, here's House 1. What's the next step? Because people don't understand.
On the budget?
Yeah, the governor just doesn't say, here's my budget, thank you.
Right. The next step is the House we will do our budget. And that's another crazy week. That's the last week in April. And those are the late nights that you hear about. I'm trying to think, the last couple of years, we were there for the week. 9, 10 o'clock. One night I think it was 11 or 12, and you're there straight through. You got to be in at 10 in the morning, and you go straight through. And it's give and take. It's there's some downtime, and then there's some very active time. You know what I mean? So there's a lot going back and forth. So that's at the point where the House Ways and Means puts together our budget. And then the Senate budget comes out after that in May, and then I think it was the end of May, June. There's the conference committee to try to iron out the differences in the budget, which then goes to the governor, and hopefully he will veto it and send back some amendments, and then there'll be votes, and all of that should get done by June 30th.
And that's always the scary part, because that should be done by June 30th, yet we have to, as you know, we have to have our budget done by June 30th.
Sure.
And we don't get to go back.
Yeah.
So, it's always amazing to me that, hey guys, have a heart. Can't you? All of this discussion, urination contest, whatever we're going to call it, couldn't we do it a little earlier?
The issue is, I think, there are just so many different stakeholders. There are just so many different interested parties, and you've got an opinion, and this one has an issue, and there's an issue, and there's an issue, and to try to bring all of that together to consensus takes time, and that's the big part of it.
But if it has to be done by June 30th, couldn't they just say it has to be done by May 30th and consolidate it?
Yeah,
I mean, maybe it's like saying world peace.
I'll raise that with the Speaker and the Senate President and see how that
it's like
goes.
saying we want world peace.
Yeah.
Everybody says yes,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
how do you get it?
I think by and large, and at that time, municipalities pretty much know what their numbers are going to be, and it's other parts, it's the outside sections, it's the earmarks, it's the local aid number at that point is pretty much,
Well, House
what it
1
is.
tells you the flavor.
Yes.
How the wind is blowing, and like I say, are we going to try for a 2.1 or a 2.7,
Right.
2.8? But it's not going to be 4 or 5.
Right.
Because there's no way that I see Milford getting huge amounts, because there's so many towns worse off than us.
I've got to think that if they're talking about allocation of funding improvements for ELL, for SPED,
That'll help.
for low income, those are 3 areas that I think Milford is affected by a great deal. So I have got to think that this funding formula, revision is going to be helpful to Milford.
And that's always hard to explain to people because they'll see Chapter 70, the school money, go up. So our budget goes up. It's like, no, you're not even getting 50% of the money from the state. So it's great that the state goes up, but even if the state didn't go up, I mean, you know, an ELL or a SPED,
Yeah.
we're going to take care of them out of our regular budget.
Right, right. And one of the other bills that I filed was brought to my attention through the business manager at Nipmuc, and it's involving SPED students in out-of-district placement. So the way the law is right now, if your district has a student who was in a private out-of-district placement move in during the school year, the sending school still has to pay that tuition because it was budgeted in the sending school. That's not so if the student comes from a public placement or a public collaborative. So for example, Mendon Nipmuc had a situation where a SPED student with a $50,000 tuition moved in the school year, and they had to pick up that tab from that point going forward.
Oh.
So the public collaborative placements is treated differently than the private placements. No rhyme or reason. I think it was an old statute. Back then, the public tuition probably wasn't the
that
number
kind of money
that it is today. So that's a bill that I filed to put them both on the same playing field. And if the student moves in right now after April 1st, the sending school has to pay the
whole year.
The next year too.
Oh.
The next year, because like you talked about, your budgets are in place. So you've budgeted child X to go to that school, even though they might move to another district. So we felt that even April 1 was too late because school departments get their budgets done probably in March. So the other part of my bill is to move that to March 1st, so that if the student comes in after March 1st as opposed to April 1, the sending school has to cover the tuition.
I remember
for the
one
next
year we had a student move in, and it was like a $200,000 placement.
The numbers are large.
And it was the end of March, and everybody said, oh, we dodged a bullet. And I shook my head and said, no, we didn't. We delayed it for a year.
Right, yeah.
But a year from now, we're picking that up, and the circuit breaker, you know, what the state puts in is 60% or so.
Yeah.
So, you know, no matter what, I mean, we've been fortunate, as you know, when we did our budgets here, that we don't hold the school responsible. No, they take,
Right.
as residents, they take responsibility, but we're not going to go to them and say, here's your budget.
Right.
Now, SPED goes up, the insurance goes up, so now you got to take it out of your typical
Right.
student budget.
Yep.
But not all towns can afford to do that.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct. And particularly Nipmuc is you know, things like that can really upset the apple cart. So that's a bill that I filed also in this
Because I
session.
can see it. I mean, preliminary numbers came back that we're probably running 400,000 short in the SPED ELL budget.
Okay.
So the school will absorb that somehow this year.
Mm-hmm.
But come July 1st, if we follow what we've done, we'll put that money back in to make them whole.
Sure.
Because otherwise, where do you get 400,000 when 80% of your budget's teachers?
You got it robbed from Peter to pay Paul, and it's the regular ed classroom that suffers.
So, now, as far as overall budget, how are we doing?
Well, I think we were doing well until December. I don't know what happened.
The first 6 months seemed to be really exciting.
It looked great. You know, we were the state was over projections, and revenue was coming in, and then, you know, it slacked off in December. So we're below benchmark projections, and the thought was, well, with the new tax laws, again another thing passed by the federal government. There's no incentive for individuals and businesses to pay their estimateds, before January 15th.
No.
So, we'll see that money pick up in January. Now, the preliminaries for the first half of January don't support that.
I was going to say, where'd it go?
Yeah, don't support that. And so I guess everyone is looking to see what the final numbers are going to be for January. And, there are some group, the Mass Taxpayers Foundation, they're very concerned because, usually this is kind of the precursor to a recession. You kind of see it at that level first. But the first 2 years I was in there, we had budget issues. We didn't meet. Well, I shouldn't say that. The second year we did finish with a surplus. The first year revenues did not meet expectations, but this past year we exceeded, and we're able to deposit a sizable amount of money in the state stabilization fund.
But now the shutdown. I heard a comment today when they were talking about if this extends to April. I was like, my Lord. But they were saying we could end up with a hot economy with no growth.
Yeah, it's just so unfortunate on so many different levels. I mean, first of all, it's totally unnecessary. It has no relation to what the president is looking for. It's hurting real people in real ways without any purpose at all. It's just totally unacceptable.
I mean, I'm really having a hard time because I'm not pleased with either side.
Well, I mean, it was initiated, by the administration and by the president, and he made no bones about it. And to be quite honest, I think it's the same way that he treated his employees. And when you run a business, I suppose you can do whatever you want, but they're commodities. They're disposable. They're not people. They're disposable. They're like computers. They're like desks. And if you use one up, you can get another one. But they're not. They're people, and they have families. And to hurt them like this unnecessarily is just abhorrent.
But has it gone past it where now it seems, I hate to say it, but it seems like a personal urination contest between Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, I think the thing that gets lost in the shuffle is that, from what I understand, the Congress has put forth a number of proposals to quote unquote increase border security, to the extent that this is even an issue. When you talk about drugs, you talk about terrorists and all that sort of thing, they're not coming in that area. But be that as it may, the Democratic House has put forth and passed a number of bills that the Republican Senate had already passed to provide adequate funding. I think they were talking about $1 to $2 billion to be used for border security in a number of different ways, and the president is just not agreeing to any of that stuff. So when you say it's that kind of a contest, I can see where it looks that way, but when you get behind it and see who's trying to do what, clearly the administration is blocking things.
I just had a hard time with, okay, we're not going to let you have a State of the Union. Okay, I'm not going to let you fly to Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that it's devolved to that.
It just seems personal. It's like, for the love of God, guys, there's 800,000 people, and let's say half of them don't have the reserves.
Oh gosh, it's awful. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yes.
Yeah.
The people who are making, UMass has, the Globe put out that they got 10, 20 people making over 100 grand. Okay, those people, if they couldn't get a paycheck for a week or two, they probably have reserves.
Well, they're not federal employees.
No, but somebody making 100, 200 grand, probably have reserves.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some people that are okay with it, but, like you said, by and large, a lot of them aren't. And again, to the bottom line point, why? Why? There's no need for this. It's not like there's this financial disaster. We have to lay off all of these people. There's no need for this, and there's no relationship to the president's fixation on putting together a wall, which in no way, shape, or form rises to the level of the complexity that the immigration issue deserves to be dealt with.
So how do we get over it? And I heard that the president is offering DACA. Here's my big bargaining chip.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, yeah, he took away something that he really shouldn't have taken away, and now he's saying, okay, well, I'll give you something that you had anyway if you give me all this money for a wall. There's no way to negotiate. That's not good policy. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't get to the crux of the issue in terms of immigration. Not at all.
But is $5 billion enough to hold all these kids? I mean, if you could really get him to let loose something on DACA and help all these kids.
I don't even think DACA is the issue. I mean, the issue is if you want to really do something meaningful about immigration, building a wall is not the way to do it. You've got to do something a lot more thoughtful than that, a lot more time intensive and harder working to figure out how you deal with stuff coming in at the ports of entry and the folks that overstay their student and work visas. I mean, it's a very complicated issue. And just building a wall, and by the way, I think we have some other borders too, don't we? I mean, it's not just, well, I mean, it's just such a, it's your typical soundbite type solution that seems is what's prevalent right now.
But it seems like when you dam a river, the water's going to flow to the point of least resistance. So if you did take our Army and line it up on Texas to California, every 2 feet you put an armed soldier. Okay, what about all the rest? Well, now, what do you do about the oceans? What do you do about Canada?
It's a very, very simplistic, and it really doesn't have any design to actually do what it accomplishes. It was a political campaign speech, and what this president doesn't realize, and it's unfortunately prevalent with a lot of folks today, there is a huge difference between campaigning and governing.
But now, what do you think the real issue is? I mean, I've heard it's the flow of drugs, it's the flow of terrorists. Is it that, or is it the support for the immigrants?
I think from the president's perspective is he needs to show the folks that support him that he's keeping his campaign promise. I think that's what it is. I don't think that he has any real interest in being effective at immigration policy or keeping people out or keeping people in or whatever the heck he wants to do. It's all about showing that he's going to get this campaign promise done about building this wall.
And and part of me cheers on somebody who runs on something and actually doesn't change their mind once they're there. But I wonder if there's not room to explain on certain issues. I really believed it, but maybe I was a little naive.
Yeah, I don't know, and I mean, I obviously don't know him, but I mean, I don't know that he's capable of that kind of intellectual curiosity and the ability to pivot like that. So, I mean, yes, there's absolutely something to be said about, someone campaigning and saying that we're going to do X,
I'm
Y,
going to
and
do
Z.
this, and
but the underlying supposition on that is that the initial pledge is an effective one.
Right.
Is something that would solve the problem. I mean, if you're going to say something that's outlandish and crazy, there's no point in keeping that. And I don't think that it was ever intended to be an effective way to deal with the immigration issues.
But now the people who are after Trump, and there's a group, thinking we should impeach him. Okay, so if we got rid of Trump, I mean, I think the rhetoric would go down, but we'd get Pence. Is that not a scarier movie?
I agree with you 100%, but I mean, yeah, and I don't think that impeachment language is worth talking about at all. It's not going to happen. There's no evidence that there's been an impeachable offense and all of that sort of thing. And even if there was, the Senate is not going to.
I was going to say, how are you going to get it through the Senate?
It's not going to happen. So I don't see that as a productive approach in any way, shape, or form.
I mean, if I was an uber conservative, I don't know that I wouldn't be happy to have Pence there.
Yeah, he's got some very, dramatic views on certainly gay individuals and some other things that has really been, kind of in the background because the president just dominates so much of the interest. But Pence, he comes across as a very nice, likable, sensible fellow, but he's got some
as an uber conservative,
very different views.
Let's see, it would be focused not on the rhetoric, not on Twitter. This guy may get some of that stuff through.
Yes.
Okay? I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I'll take my hat off to Trump because he had our economy going at 4%. You know, after listening to...
I don't know that that was what he had. There's always a time lag when administration comes in, you know. I mean, the economy, you know, if he gets sworn in January 20th, you know, he doesn't, I mean, basically he's dealing with the previous administration's budget, you know. So there's always a year or two time lag when a
But it was
president
8
comes
years
in.
that we never hit above 2.
Well, again,
So there
I
was
mean, if you
something.
go back to the starting point of where it was,
the
it was
first 3 or 4 years,
it was absolute disaster in the
Bush,
country.
Bush, but then year 5,
It was
year
absolute
6,
disaster.
and I sit there and say, you know, whatever, I don't know how, I don't know why, but it sure seems that once we change.
And by the way, how's that stock market doing right now?
Yeah, that's a scary movie.
So now you're seeing some of his stuff come in now 2 years into it. Now you're seeing some of the effects. Not the first year, certainly not the first year, maybe not even the second year.
But
There's always a time lag.
It seemed like too much of a coincidence that he took over and all of a sudden, and maybe it was just everybody got excited.
I don't know. Yeah, but
I mean, I remember back in 2000.
I don't think people got excited when they got their you know, financial summaries in November,
No, it's just like
December,
when we had it in 8.
January. Any gains that were gotten have long been lost.
In 2008, we had the same where everybody was saying, oh my God, I lost 30%.
Yeah, sure.
And I knew that if I got involved with my portfolio, guaranteed it would go down. I've learned over the years that I have a foolproof way of affecting it.
Yeah.
I get involved, it goes down. And you know, the guys at Wells Fargo said, stay the course.
Yeah, that's usually what it is.
And
yeah.
2 years later,
Yeah.
I'm back plus.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, the problem is if you're retired and you're
Right.
living off of the dividend income or, you know, the income, well, those 2 years, you're going to be awful hungry.
Yeah, it's very difficult for folks on fixed incomes and who depend on that, absolutely.
Now, I read something this weekend about a way of raising $1 billion over a number of years by increasing the transfer tax on homes.
Yeah, that's a bill, well, actually, I don't know if he filed a separate bill on it, or it's contained in the budget, but it's a proposal by the governor to raise that amount of money by increasing the tax on the sales of real estate, all real estate, and creating a fund for climate change control to disperse to various different areas to combat the effects of climate change. And we did some of that this year with the bond bill in terms of some of the coastal communities and things that can be put in place to try to help protect property. But clearly the governor is looking to do more in that area. So that's a proposal that's coming
But
from
won't that
Governor
hurt
Baker.
people? I mean, when I moved up from Maryland, you know, I was recruited at a company out in Hopkinton, and I looked at what it was going to cost to move me, and I said, oh my God, I don't think so. And they offered to pay it all, and then mark it up, and it was 60-some, almost 70 or 70-some $1,000s to move me. When
Yeah.
by the time you put in temporary housing, mortgages, all that nonsense. If a company isn't moving me, you know, my daughter, we just had a granddaughter. She wants a bigger
Congratulations, yeah, congratulations.
3 days old. My grandson's 3 years old. So now their house that was fine for 3 of them,
Yeah,
and they're looking, maybe we ought to get a bigger house.
yeah.
But if you're adding 5%, that's another $15,000 in tax, no?
No, it's $1 on the excise tax. So right now the excise tax total is $4.56 per $1,000 on a sale. So
Oh, so it's only like
so say-
1,500.
I don't even
I'm
know
off-
if it's that, because it's going to
Okay.
be another $1. So $1 per 1,000. So what's that over $100,000?
Yeah, it's
It's
$100.
$100.
Okay, because
That's-
when I
that's-
started going up 5%, I said, oh my God.
Well, no, I think maybe on the overall tax.
Right, okay.
But the way, and that 456 is the total, and I think part of it, there's an assessment of $2, and then, 246 or whatever it is for 56. So I think he's adding $1.
So it'd be
just
$100
to
bucks,
that.
$200 on a house.
Yes.
That makes me feel better.
It would be negligible on the sale of a piece of property, but it's cumulative, and the fund would accumulate. And
I missed the
and use
decimal point. That makes me feel better, because I was looking
Yeah.
at that thing saying,
No, that would be
5%.
No. That would be significant. That would be significant.
You're going to cripple the housing market, which
Yes. No. It's just $1. So like I said, that excise tax is $4.56 per
Okay.
$1,000. So if you add $1 to it for a $100,000 sale, it's $100.
okay, that makes me feel
But
better.
it's another example of Governor Baker being very, very active. If you saw, he also came out with his road safety bill. And there was a previous bill filed by Senator Montigny, I believe, that I signed on to ban the handheld.
That's enough
things.
to infuriate me. If you could ban handheld and makeup handheld, and I'm not trying to be sexist, but
Yeah.
when I think of distracted drivers,
Yeah.
and I see men and women, men doing their hair and
Yeah.
women doing their makeup and people holding it and getting cut off, that's a scary movie.
I think the big thing is the texting. The texting has become so prevalent in the last few years, and there's been so many, bad accidents as a result of that. And the law that's on the books right now is really unenforceable. It's just, you just can't enforce it. So if you just ban the use of the handheld items, that's the way it would be.
Now, I'll
that's the way it'd be
admit, I
enforced.
have texted when I come to a red light,
Yes,
and I'm sitting there and get a couple quick words,
I know.
and then all of a sudden the green light's up, I'm like, oh, put the phone down, let's go.
Right.
That, I'll admit, I'm not being good, perfect.
Yeah.
But when I see people driving,
Oh.
I mean, my God,
You
you're
see
waiting.
people looking down,
Right.
looking down all the time. Yeah. So the governor came out very strong on that bill. I think that was just yesterday. It's tough to keep track because he's come out with a number of initiatives. Yeah.
What else is new and exciting up on the Hill?
Well, like I said, it seems that there's a tremendous amount of interest around environmental bills. There's obviously a tremendous amount of support for increasing educational funding. I would say off the top of my head, those are probably the two major areas that I kind of
Now-
see the most activity on right now.
Again, I don't know if it's just my impression or if it's fact, but the whole argument about immigration, for a long time, the Milford area was hot on discussing immigration,
Yes.
which I never understood how we could do anything. I mean, you can't deport somebody to Rhode Island,
Right.
but it was a hot topic. I haven't heard much about it lately.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously taken on a big national tilt. I think people maybe realize that locally, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of the way things have always been, and it's really not, that big of a deal. I think the federal government really has to bring some sort of coherence to the immigration policy in this country.
Well, they're the only ones that can,
The
really.
only one that can. The only
mean,
ones that can.
I don't mean to be mean, but Brian, you can have an opinion.
Yeah,
It's worth as much as mine,
sure.
because even though you can vote, your vote doesn't carry any weight on national
Right.
immigration policy.
Right.
It's got to be somebody in Washington,
Yeah,
and
that's really where it's got to start.
I've got a fundamental problem. When Obama came out and said, I'm not going to bother the people that put their head down and just work. Yes, they're illegal. They are breaking the law, but they're just working.
Sure.
But anybody who murders, rapes, pillages, if they're breaking whatever, you're in my house, you break my furniture, I should have the right to throw you out.
Absolutely.
So I just don't understand some of the views, like the sanctuary thing.
Yeah, and it's funny you should mention that. That was a huge issue last term, and that bill was pushed very, very hard. It has been refiled again by a different representative, different senator, I believe. But there has not been the level
I haven't
of
heard
advocacy or support
the
for it like it
noise.
was last time. No.
I mean, candidly, I don't get it because, like I say, there are people here who are not here legally, and they put their heads down, they work hard, they care about their kids. Okay, I guess being first generation, to Milford, I have some sympathy there.
Sure.
But when you see people breaking the law, I have no problem calling the feds. I just don't.
In Milford, I think that there's been a very good working relationship with our local police department, which I think handles the issue very intelligently and compassionately in our community. And at the same time, when they do need to reach out to DEA or to ICE about particular issues, they do, and those are the people that you don't want in the community.
Right.
So I didn't support the Safe Communities because I didn't want to make the relationship between the local police department and ICE ambiguous. They ought to be working together on those kinds of cases. And there was a huge misconception as to what that bill did and didn't do.
Well, Tom was always really clear where he said, why would I poison a relationship with the Guatemalan, the Ecuadorian, the Brazilian community over an issue I can't do anything about?
Yeah.
I find out that you're, except for being illegal, you're a law-abiding citizen, paying taxes, contributing.
Sure.
I'm not real worried about those people. I'm
No.
worried about the ones that are beating people up, extorting, doing all the bad things.
Dealing drugs.
Dealing.
And in Milford, I think Milford has been a prime example of how to handle it the right way. I think they've had to come down hard when they need to, and at other times, allow people to live their lives.
But I liked when Tom said, he goes, I can't do anything about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I find somebody, they're not here legally, they overstayed their visa, whatever. I haven't heard about them for the 5 years they've been living here. Okay, so if I call, and he put in perspective, he said to me once, if I hermetically seal the borders, Starship Enterprise comes down, puts a force field.
Yeah.
He goes, following our laws, it would take 84 years to deport everybody who isn't legal. And that's using the force field or force shield, whatever they have,
Sure.
to make sure not one new immigrant gets in.
Yeah.
84 years from now, I'm not going to...
You're not going to worry about it.
Right.
I know. Yeah, it was, so that has not been a major issue. I don't know if you noticed, so the Sanctuary State bill, that, got refiled, but I don't see a big major push behind that in this cycle. So, you're right, the tone of the immigration issues, at least locally, has changed.
Coming to the end, any last words?
No, just looking forward to a very exciting session. I mean, it's getting back to what you first talked about, starting my second session, there's a real sense of, you kind of know what to expect and where you're at and how to, move things along a little further. So, I'm real excited to get started for another session.
Thank you for moving things forward for us.
We try to, yeah.
And I look forward to hearing come April or May about the budget.
Absolutely, we'll be here.
And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, thanks for joining in tonight. May God bless. May tomorrow be a better day than today. And get to know our legislators, because we haven't shut down in Massachusetts. Brian and Ryan, even though they wear different colored ties, seem to work together to do the best for our town of Milford. So good night. God bless. Thank you.
Not too long since I've been home.